So as you learned from the client-server model slideshow on the course website, websites are rendered in a browser or client by first sending a request to a server, which is a computer somewhere in the world, that then sends the necessary files back to the browser as a response. What we're going to talk about today is how you get the files up onto the server in the first place so that people can see your website. What you'll need first is called an FTP client, whereas browsers use Hypertext Transfer Protocol or HTTP to make requests and handle responses. To send the files to the server so that they can be requested, you'll be using the File Transfer Protocol or FTP. For this course, we recommend using Filezilla, which is a free FTP solution or client that is available for pretty much every platform. If you're using the GSAP school computers, you'll probably be using a program called WinSCP. Or if you're running a Mac, you can also get a program called Transmit, which is what we use. So once you've downloaded, you can get the Filezilla code for free from filezilla-project.org/download.php. Once you've downloaded it and installed, you can open Filezilla. And pretty much every FTP client works in a very similar way, so whatever we do here should be pretty easy to transport to a different FTP client if you're using something else. In Filezilla, what you're going to want to do is go under File into Site Manager. And so here you can set up the parameters to link to your website that we've set up for you. And if you save it, it makes it easy so you don't have to type in the code or your password and your username every time. So for each of the groups in the course, we've set up a website at group and then your group number .webassite.com. Right now when you go in there, if you put this into your browser URL, group 1 through 7, you'll see that we made folders for each of the students, and then inside of each of those folders there's another set of folders, assets, CSS, JS, and an HTML file, which is assign 1, which you'll be using for this assignment. So to be able to upload new files to this directory or change the files that are currently there, if you go to Filezilla, so the first thing you want to do is click on New Site, and you can give it a name, which might be Web as Site. And then the host is going to be the website itself. So in the case of group 1, it's group1.webassite.com. The port is important. You have to specify it's 22. And then finally, the protocol is not going to be just FTP, but it's SSH File Transfer Protocol, or SFTP. So make sure to do that. Finally, the logon type will be normal, which will allow you to put in your username and password. The username will have been sent to you as well. In the case of group 1, it's group 1, and then the password, group 1 will be the only ones to know. Then you can click OK, and then if you go back to the site manager, into make sure Web as Site is selected, and then click Connect. The first time you log in, you might get a warning like this. You'll want to click Always Trust This Host, add this key to the cache, and click OK. Then it will log in. So in Filezilla, on the left, you'll have your local computer, and on the right, you'll have the remote computer, which in our case is actually a computer in New Jersey. When you log in, there'll be a folder called Writable, and to be able to put stuff onto the web, you need to first go into Writable. And then you'll see what we saw when we went to group1.webassite.com, all of the folders with each of the student names. And here they are. So if I go into Carolina, I'll be able to see all of the folders in the same way that I'll be able to see them here. So assets, CSS, JS, and assign1.html. Again, the same thing is here. I've made a folder on my desktop called Web as Site, and I'm going to take all of these folders and the assign1 file, and I'm going to drag it over here. And that's going to use the file transfer protocol to take those files on the remote machine and bring them to my local computer. Once they're here, now I can open them with a text editor. For this course, we suggest using Sublime Text 2, which you can get at sublimetext.com/2 for OS X, Windows, and Linux. If you're using computers in the school, you can use Adobe Dreamweaver, or you could also, if you want to be a little more old school, could use something like Notepad. But basically you want to stay away from anything like Word or other forms of word processors that are going to add all kinds of extra information. To be able to code for the web, you need a text editor that's not going to be adding extra markup that you can't see. So I'm going to open up my Finder now. And if I go to the Web as Site folder on my desktop, I'm going to see that I've downloaded now, or FTP'd, the assign1.html file, assets, CSS, and JS folders. I'm going to take the assign1 file and open it in Sublime Text 2, which I've already done, and open it in Sublime Text 2, and you'll see it here. So the first thing you'll notice is there's a doctype tag, and the doctype HTML tells the browser when it's parsing this HTML file to expect HTML, that this is the type of file it is. This is then followed by the HTML open tag, and the last tag the last line in the document is an HTML close tag, which means everything between these two tags is interpreted as HTML. The next two main points are that there's a head tag, a head opening and a head closing, and inside the head tag will be things like metadata, the title of the page, as you can see here, which is set first to Web as Site, and other things like dependencies, so you can download CSS files and JavaScript files and so on. So none of the things in head will really be rendered to the main part of the browser, to the content part of the window. It's everything within body that will be rendered to the window. So the first exercise is basically just going to be to test this workflow of using an FTP client to upload a file to the server so that you can see it as a web page through your browser. So we're going to ask that you take some of these tags on this list here, or any others that you find online, because obviously this is not an exhaustive list, and make a sort of composition on the base HTML file that you've been given. So if we go back to the Sublime Text 2 and the assign1.html file, what you're going to want to do is, between the two body tags, start to put in some content. So whatever you put in here will be rendered to the screen. And the idea is not to put together a kind of web page from the early 1990s that describes something, but rather just play around with the different tags to get a sense of how they work, use as many as you can, and to develop a kind of composition of sorts. So instead of using H1 to say this is the title of the page, you might decide to use it to just make really large shapes on the page. You can use an H2 likewise to do whatever you like. Note that with Sublime Text 2 also, when you start to type quotations or parentheses, as soon as you type the opening quote or the opening parenthesis, it will give you the closing parenthesis as well. So just be careful about that when you're writing if you use this editor. You can insert some horizontal rules, some line breaks, paragraph tags with some HTML code. And one other thing that might be kind of interesting, or at least just to kind of shortcut this demo, is to go and hunt for some ASCII art, which will give you a sense of how white space works in HTML, which is not entirely intuitive. So I did a quick search and came up with this site, and I'm just going to copy paste this text here, take it back to Sublime. I'll zoom out so you can see better. And one tag that might be interesting for you to know is the pre tag. And basically everything that goes between an open and closed pre tag will maintain the formatting that you see when you write it in your text editor. So if I put the strange flower blossom between the pre tags, versus if I put it between a regular div tag, you'll see that it renders quite differently. So if I zoom out, you can see that it's the exact same text or code between the tags, but this one, the first one is wrapped in a pre-tag, and the second one is wrapped in a div tag. So if we go back to the FTP client, and we click refresh, we'll see that, in fact, I didn't save the file yet, so if I go back and hit save on assign1.html, come back to Filezilla, refresh again, and now we can see that the time is 7:13, which is the time in my computer. Now I can take this and drag it from the left side, which is my local machine, to the right side, which is the remote machine in New Jersey. It'll check and it'll realize that there's already a file of name assign1.html. And Filezilla and a lot of other FTP clients will give you this warning to make sure that you don't overwrite something you don't want to. You can check this box that says always use this action, so you don't have to worry about it, but it's actually good practice to leave it on so that you don't actually overwrite something really important by accident. So we'll hit OK. And now if we go back to the browser, we'll go over to Carolina, whose website I've pirated for this example. Go into assign1.html, and you'll see the ampersands and asterisks, the parentheses, the two horizontal rules, the copyright sign, and then, as you can see, the flower or blossom that was rendered between the pre-tags maintains its formatting, whereas the same text that was rendered inside the div tag actually loses its formatting because all of the white space is collapsed.